Greetings to all. Welcome to Term 3, Class 7, Unit 1, Supplementary. The title of the story is Sinbad, My First Voyage. Voyage means a long journey, especially by ship. Let's read. Sinbad the sailor is a fictional mariner and the hero of a story cycle of Middle Eastern origin. He is described as a man from Baghdad during the early Abbasid Caliphate, 8th and 9th centuries CE. In the course of 7 voyages throughout the seas east of Africa and south of Asia, he has fantastic adventures in magical realms, encountering monsters and witnessing supernatural phenomena. In this extract, the rich Sinbad describes his first voyage to the poor Sinbad porter. Sinbad the sailor is an imaginary character of a story cycle of Middle Eastern origin. He is the hero of this story. He is a sailor and merchant. Merchant means a person whose job is to buy and sell goods, usually of one particular type, in large amounts. He is described as a man from Baghdad. His stories take place in the days of Abbasid Caliphate. There are 7 stories about Sinbad's journeys. He has many adventures. In this story, the narrator's name as well as the listener's name also Sinbad. Sinbad, the sailor, is the hero of the story, describes his experience to the poor Sinbad the porter. This is the tale of the first voyage of Sinbad the sailor. My father was a rich merchant. When he died, I was still young. He left behind a big wealth. However, I was an inexperienced, thoughtless youth and spent all his wealth foolishly. Remember, children, the narrator of the story is Sinbad the sailor. In this story, the words my, I refer to the narrator Sinbad the sailor. Here, my father refers to the hero of the story, Sinbad the sailor's father. Sinbad the sailor's father was a rich merchant. When he died, he left behind a big wealth. Sinbad spent all his wealth without proper plan. I returned to my senses only after the loss of all the wealth. I decided to sail for the Persian Gulf with some goods. A group sailed from one country to another, selling the goods. One day, when we were on board, we saw a beautiful small green island. Just to have some fun, we all got down on the green patch. We were hungry and so we decided to cook some food there. After realizing his fault, Sinbad decided to sail for the Persian Gulf with some goods. One day, on board, the group saw a beautiful small green island. Out of curiosity, they all got down on the green patch. They decided to cook as they were hungry. As soon as we lit the fire for cooking, we got a jerk. The island was trembling. It was no island. It was the back of a huge animal which got disturbed when the fire was lit on his back. We were terrified when we realized this. Everyone jumped into the sea to save his life. Most of them boarded the ship, but a few were not so fortunate. Before they could climb up, the captain started the ship hurriedly, leaving behind a few sailors who were still struggling in the sea for their life. I was one among those strugglers. Fortunately, I caught hold of a big piece of wood floating nearby and held onto it. As soon as they lit the fire for cooking, they got a jerk. The island was shaking. It was not an island, but a huge animal. Everyone jumped into the sea to save his life. A few of them couldn't board the ship and they were left there struggling for their life. Sinbad was one among them. Luckily, Sinbad got hold of a big piece of wood floating nearby and held on to it. I was being tossed by the powerful sea waves, but I held on to the wood and kept floating for a long time. At last, I was thrown on an island. I was very tired and extremely hungry. But on the island, there was nothing to eat except a few herbs. Due to the continuous struggle in the seawater, my limbs became stiff and refused to move. I somehow managed to crawl to get a few herbs. I ate them and quenched my thirst from a spring on the island. Sinbad held the wood and kept floating for a long time. At last, he was thrown on an island. He didn't get anything to eat. He became tired. At last, he ate some herbs and drank water from a spring on the island. As I walked further in this strange land, I met a man. The man asked me where I had come from and who I was. I poured out my misfortune to him. The man felt pity when he heard my sad story. He took me inside a cave. There were a number of men present. They were all slaves of the king of the island. Those men were kind. They served me good food and drink and treated me well. Sinbad walked further in the island. There he met a man. He told his story to him. The man took him inside a cave. There were a number of slaves of the king of the island. They gave him good food and drink. Later on, they produced me in front of the king Mirjan, who was the ruler of the island. I narrated my tale of suffering and hardship to the king. The king was a noble and kind person. He sympathized with me and appointed me as an officer on the spot. Then they produced him in front of the king Mijan. Sinbad, the sailor, narrated his story of suffering and hardship to the king. The king was a kind person. He took pity on him. He appointed him as an officer on the spot. Soon I became friendly with the people on the island. There were a number of other small islands nearby. These islands were under King Mirjan. During my stay, I witnessed a number of remarkable sights. The seawater around the islands contained huge and terrible fishes. A few were 100 times bigger than the largest ship. Once I saw a fish that had a head like a bull. I witnessed many unimaginable wonders. Sinbad became friendly with the people on the island. There were a number of other small islands under the king. During his stay, he witnessed a number of wonderful things, including a huge and terrible fishes. One day he saw a fish that had a head like a bull. He witnessed many unimaginable wonders there. Ships from different parts of the world visited this small island kingdom's port regularly. Every day, I would ask the visiting sailors about my city Baghdad. But no one knew about my city. I longed to go back home. Ships from different parts of the world visited the small island. Sindbad inquired about his city Baghdad, but no one knew about his city. Sindbad longed to go back home. One day, when I was standing on the port, I saw a ship approaching the port. It was the same ship which had sailed further after leaving me behind, struggling in the sea. When the captain of the ship saw me, he was greatly surprised to find me alive. He and the other crew members hugged me with happiness. The captain handed over my goods to me, which had been left on the ship. One day, the same ship which he boarded happened to come to that place. The captain of the ship was surprised to find Sindbad alive. He and the crew members hugged him with happiness. The captain handed over Sindbad's hood to him. Among my goods, I chose a few valuable items and presented those to the kind king. In return, the king also gave me expensive presents. The ship stayed on the island for a few days. Meanwhile, I did good business and earned a lot of money. Sinbad presented some of his goods to the kind king. In return, the king also gave him expensive presents. As the ship stayed on the island for a few days, Sinbad did good business and earned a lot of money. When it was time to leave, I went to meet the king. I thanked the king for his kindnesses and all the favors he had done to me. The king again gave me many valuable farewell gifts. Finally, I returned to my city Baghdad as a rich man. When it was time to leave, Sindbad met the king and he thanked the king for his kindness. The king again gave him many valuable gifts. Finally, Sindbad returned to his city Baghdad as a rich man. Sindbad completed the tale of his first voyage. The poor porter Sindbad was listening to the amazing tale of Sindbad with all the wonder. Sindbad, the sailor, then bade goodbye to the poor porter and asked him to come the next day to hear the tale of his new voyage. But before leaving, he presented Sindbad a purse full of gold coins. The unexpected riches overjoyed Sindbad the porter. He thanked his rich host and went home. Sindbad completed the story of his first voyage. The poor porter Sindbad listened the story with wonder. Sindbad the sailor said goodbye to the poor porter and asked him to come back the next day to hear the tale of his new voyage. Before leaving, Sindbad the sailor presented a purse full of gold coins to the porter Sindbad. He thanked him and went home. Dear children, let us recall some important points. Sindbad the sailor is an imaginary character. He describes his 7 voyages experience to a poor porter Sindbad. Sindbad the sailor is the hero of the story, describes his experience to the poor Sindbad the porter. On Sindbad's first voyage, he and his crew visited an island that turned out to be a huge sleeping whale. When they lit a fire, the whale woke up and dived underwater. At last, Sindbad was picked up by the ship and went home. Dear children, read the lesson Sindbad, my first voyage. Dear children, thank you for watching this video.